Thank you very much. We can open some kind of discussion or observation if you want to do. I think it is very important to understand our common message that in this thing that is to defend the human dignity, freedom, and the good deed as part of the human dignity, we are the same ideas, and we are the same impression of the injustice that we have today. And we also have the idea that we need to follow the reason, especially scientific reason in this, as we follow the scientific reason in the question of climate change. And all the religions have, in one hand, the faith, but in the other hand, the reason that is the proper guide for the human being. So, what is your impression about this? And I think it is very important to understand that the religion can give some kind of values in the decision of the governments and in the decision of the people to go to the common good and to put in the center the human person. Anyway, it's important to hear your ideas. Please.
First of all, thank you for this opportunity to discuss. It's very, when you're in the international community, it's very hard to bring religion into the discussion, despite your personal beliefs and what motivates you. So thank you for bringing this in. I guess my plea or my question is, it's how do we bring this to our regular meetings? We can do this here in the Vatican, where it's natural that we do it in the Vatican, but when we're in FAO, when we're in WHO, how can we bring you these views? It's great that we cut across religion, but everybody is very careful. You don't want to bring in your personal religious beliefs into the discussion in a secular setting. And so how do we do this?
Of course, I can say something, but also my friends can say other things. I think that it's important to understand, to observe the new ideas that come from for Pope Francis in concretely. That is, of course, it's not easy. We have a movement, ecumenical movement, and dialogue of interreligious dialogue that come from in our church from the Council, Vatican Council II. And the idea was created a new council for the religion that have a common origin, and we say Council for Ecumenism, and to create a new ministerial council to the dialogue interreligion for all the religions of the world that have some influence in the global world. But really, this was in the basis to discuss, to understand the content of religion. So it was more in the line to understand what are in common in our belief. So in the question of God and in the question of the relation of God. But the idea, in consequence of, in the basis of this dialogue, we arrived also to another dimension of this, that is what we can do in common, because it's not easy to pray together with it, because we have difference in the interpretation of God. But we can act and do together in the defense of the human dignity and the more important characteristic of human being, that is freedom, that is peace, that is solidarity, justice, and these values that are also consequence of a religion. So in this field, in this dimension, we can act together, and we need to act together to have some influence in the world. And we observe, we can say also, new ideas that come from the United Nations, because the United Nations to come to us, to ask for help, for collaborate in the question of climate change. And we have meeting here with the General Secretary of the United Nations, but also in other questions, in the question of peace. So today, many people, many governments, and people of the United Nations understand that it's very important the influence of the religion in the people, also to convince the people about the ethics, values, to act for peace, for change the climate, in this case for alimentation, and for the diet, and for say to the people, we need to follow the reason and the scientific reason. So, because it's part of the reason. Thank you. I don't know if you want to say something.
Very much for the question, because it's very pertinent. Despite, and think that Laudatio Si was an inspiration to all of us, and what you say is true, but it is still so that we battle with those two languages, the language of religion and the language of development. But there are already signs like the Partners for Religion Development, with the help of the German government. We have formed a group of faith-based organizations, international organizations like United Nations, UNICEF, and others, and governments. And for instance, there is a book, and if you are interested, I can make sure that you all get one. It is Voices from Religions on Sustainable Development, in which there is a basis for this cooperation. And I must tell you that when I spoke now, because it had to be short, about the briefs for the G20, do you think the G20 really didn't want us? They didn't want the religions to be together. It was somehow a togetherness with Dr. Snower, if I say, and myself and others who were so adamant. And now in Buenos Aires, there's a G20, and again, it is very, very difficult. So what you say is so important, but also from the other side. I said to you yesterday, the discussion about, let's say, the obesity at one hand, and the undernourishment, the waste, as you pointed out. The knowledge that I received is now to go being the center of an educational week in Holland, which I am leading, so I can introduce it, that this conference will be an inspiration to young people in the classroom, in thousands of schools. We have it about dissemination, with all the tools that there are, and we know that the tools of mass communication are not always safe, but it is a great opportunity. So I would say to you, yes, when the health or with the FAO come together, it's not only a prayer somehow to share, already a prayer is a beginning, but also to feel that there is this, imagine we don't know, we say 80% of the population is connected with a spiritual basis. But we know that it is still a strong force. And when, for instance, the words were used, the value change, I remember a conference in 1993, which was the title, Value Change. And it was a global forum of spiritual parliamentary leaders. Another attempt. It is not easy, but it is very important to give that sustainability. And so I applaud that you made this also part of our discussions. And as I said, I draw sustenance from this. What I suddenly thought to myself is the following, just about text. You know, in a few days it is Day of Atonement. And my congregation and I, everywhere in the world, we will refrain from eating as a commemoration, but also as a, and we read from Isaiah chapter 57. And there the words are, is Day of Atonement a day when you should punish your bodies and refrain from food? No, it is to remind us that what we have to do is faros laraev lachmecha, share your food with the hungry. That means share from your food. You feel it. And at the beginning, before that, it says, Shalom, shalom, larachok v'lakarov. Peace, peace to those who are far away and those who are nearby. So the question is, why first far away? And here, in this place, I find a new commentary. Because what we are talking about is talking to those who are far away, who are forlorn, who are not being seen, who don't come to conferences, but are they suffering? Are the ones who are together? You know, a parable in Judaism, very, very short parable, the shortest, is there's a boat on the sea, and two men are sitting in the boat, and one is making a big hole in the boat. So the other one says, what are you doing? We're going to die. So he says, don't worry, I'm only making a hole in my part of the boat. That's what is happening. And therefore those who are far away are nearby. Love your neighbor as yourself is love as one of the rabbis said, love these humans who are far away. That will bring you to love really your neighbor. So there is so much that is in our joint scriptures. You know that in Islam, in Quran, tzedakah, is to give charity. No. Yes, it is to give charity, but tzedakah in Judaism, in Christianity, and in Islam is justice. The word is justice. We are not speaking about charity. We are speaking about justice. And somehow to have this perspective of hope. You know, as I said, is it not a miracle that when we are faced with those graphics and those figures and those abundance of obstacles, that we can still be hopeful? But why are we hopeful? Because we all know, and this is what the spirituality has stressed, we know that we are going towards a road of messianic time. And what is messianic time? I don't say about the different traditions about how it looks like. It is our commandment to realize in this world a world where every human dignity is being observed and where the uniqueness of every human being is recognized. And I'm so happy to share with you, because you in Burundi, you were far away, but you are nearby. And all those with you in Burundi are not far away. They are together. And I would like this enormous potential and source of inspiration that we can give each other to make this road doable, to be part of us. Also in the meetings of the United Nations, also in meetings of experts, because it is, you know, if I would not have been here, the fact of the waste, despite the fact that I know it and that I go with it, would not have penetrated my soul. And now I can't get rid of it. And this is something that we have to respond to. So this is also a plea that what happened this afternoon will happen, I mean, not this afternoon, what happened in this conference, where the afternoon is part of us, that it will happen more often.
Well, I will be very short to his question. I mean, I think what is really required when we say collaborate with religious, it's not a request for having a place of prayer at FAO, but it's a reminder that those people who work at FAO or other international organizations or in the institutions, the industries, to have, when we are thinking about the other, the human being, to have the passion of the rabbi. Say, why am I doing what I'm doing? What is the end purpose of this? Is it to improve the dignity and the well-being of my fellow human being, the neighbor? I mean, love your neighbor, I think, is a phrase which is in every culture, every religion. It's a challenge we do not meet when we are self-centered, when we want to have more for myself. But then how do we share? I think that's really what is needed. The second, what my experience has shown me is when you take the results of your research to the ground. I remember the egg foundation. If you want that the people in the families, that the father and mother give the egg to the children. For us in Africa, in our culture, you talk about it when there's a meeting, because they will say, if the priest has said it, it is true. So if the priest says, give the egg to your children, then people change. Otherwise, those even who have hens, they only have eggs to sell, not to eat at home. So the change of the culture, that's what we say, how do we mobilize la sensibilisation? How do we bring these people to take into account what they are getting? And how do we access your results, your data? Thank you.
I just wanted to add bridges between generations. The interchange between our generations is so important, like between women and men. And I dare to say something which maybe I'm not yet allowed to say. We are working very hard on a World Conference of Religious Leaders in the Peace Palace in the year 2020. I'm going home to have this. When you get a press release in a few days or 2 weeks, I have not spoken. My secret is out, and I'm very, very happy. If you don't hear it, then we are still on the way. We haven't reached. What I mean is, there are attempts by the interfaith community to stress friendship across religions. Very, very important. And on the basis of this trust and friendship, really to be of help in our common search.
Colleagues, I'm sure we have all got inspiration from the conversation and the presentations, which we have been able to listen to. Archbishop Bernard reminded us, actually you mocked us by saying this is a panel of faith leaders. You can all be faith leaders. Howdy, that's part of the answer to your question. Rabbi Avram called on us to bring spirit into all meetings, not just here in the Vatican. So that is also an answer to the question which not only you but many of us had. And Monsignor Marcelo, while emphasizing that we must be guided by science, underlines that we need to and can collaborate with God for our daily bread. That's an invitation. I think, Marcelo, that wonderful quote from Ignacio, work as hard as you can, I inverted, yeah? Work as hard as you can, as if everything depends on you, that applies already to everyone in the room. We all work as hard as we can, as everything depends on us, or at least we believe that. So I'm not making an appeal, try harder, to this community here, but adding that we should pray like everything depends on God. Those of us who are comfortable with us can also take that home. So let me, on behalf of the Academy, thank our three speakers and all of you. But I would like to also appeal to the agencies which are about to organize conferences on food safety and healthy diet, to give spiritual thought and leadership and alliances a proper space for action and for entering thought, their thought, into the process. And there are mechanisms for that, also reaching beyond Christian faiths at these meetings. Colleagues, time is running away. Lawrence, would you be so kind to get near a microphone? You and I and Marcelo Sanchez, our Chancellor, are supposed to come to a closure and should lower ourselves to a bit of technical discussion on the way forward. I would like to give you the first the floor. Then I say a few words, and I would like to, in the end, to ask Marcelo Sanchez, our Chancellor, to say a few closing remarks. We need to map out the way forward from here, with the draft declaration becoming a full-fledged and acceptable declaration, hopefully to many, influential for the upcoming events. So that process, we will not be able to get into all details for closure now. I'm also concerned that in the remaining minutes, we should not try to become a drafting committee in this room. We have electronic means for that. Although maybe some Pentecostal spirit has set in that we speak all with one voice as nutritionists, as was asked before, I'm afraid we shouldn't test that. That we have nutritionists with one voice, or economists raising one arm and not the other hand. No, it will not work like that. But we need to come to a constructive way forward. Lawrence, may I call on you and make a few remarks, and then let's take a total of 15 minutes. People who have the urge may very briefly intervene before we close. Please, Lawrence.
Thank you, Joachim. I am very struck by the Archbishop's comments about the words he heard a lot: change and collaboration. And I very much like the story that the rabbi told us about the hole in my part of the boat. And my comments come up in that spirit. I guess the big strategic thing for me has been, how do we get these two worlds, and I think they are two worlds, of food safety and healthy diets, closer together to exploit some of the synergies and soften perhaps some of the trade-offs, at least the financial trade-offs, in terms of competing for resources and attention. And I don't know how to do it, but I wanted to tell you why I think it's important that we try. I'm very struck by the fact that our colleagues from FAO and WHO were telling us about the international conference next year. It's the first international conference. I'm very struck by that. Why is it the first? Maybe there's a good reason for that. I'm very struck by the fact that our EC colleague from DevCo said food safety is not a priority at the moment. I think I got that right. I'm very struck by the fact that there is no food security index to measure, food safety index to measure the food safety of a system. And I'm very struck by the fact, and maybe you have to tell me, Delia, if I've got this right, in the International Agricultural Research Centers, there are 12 research programs, and I imagine there's about 60 or 70 flagship programs, and there's only one on food safety.
And that's only for the last 2 years.
And that's only very recently. So I'm on the one hand, I can see that food safety is a very important issue that I think is punching below its weight in terms of the resources it attracts, the attention it attracts, and the impact it could be having. And that's no reflection on anyone in this room. It's more a reflection of the environment and the context you work in. On the other hand, I look at the folks who worry about the composition of diet in terms of its nutrients and the macronutrients and the micronutrients, and the mainly around the NCD health issues. And I think to myself, we would stand to gain a lot from working closer with the food safety folks, and I think the food safety folks would gain a lot. Food safety folks would gain access to, I think, a bigger number of conversations and bigger conversations, I think. And the food system folks would benefit because the food safety folks, they really know food systems. They have to work up and down the food system. And I think a lot of the energy for change in our food systems will come from agencies like Pavan Agarwal's agency, the Food Standards and Safety Agencies. So I see a lot of potential for collaboration, but I have Delia's comments ringing in my ears about how when food safety was sort of put with food security, it kind of got lost, and it was a poor relation. Maybe that's a way of putting it. So I see the advantages of these two worlds coming together. I think they need each other, but I think there are risks around dilution of identity, dilution of impact, and maybe dilution of a sense of coherence. So that's where I'm at, Joachim. Those are my reflections, and it relates to the statement, I think.
Let me make a few remarks on the way forward with the declaration, then briefly open it up to really one or two sentence type of interventions. I'm afraid that some people need to go to airports and catch flights, and then we would erode, and rather than stand up and all leave with an uplifted spirit and agenda. You have seen the declaration. It is structured broadly in three parts. One is a conceptual section clarifying concepts, one on principal findings, echoing what has been brought here to the floor from the different communities, all science and evidence-based, and a set of 8 recommendations in the end. None of this is sacrosanct. You're invited to send emails to us, and I would suggest, Steve, can you be the focal point, or Greg? Have you sorted it out so that nothing is lost? So you have all the emails of our colleagues from GAIN. You're welcome to copy me. So then we will bring a refreshed, revised draft to everyone's attention. And thereafter we will share it one more time, asking you to broadly agree or not. And if you broadly agree, then the question is if you are willing to be a co-signee of this beyond us co-organizers from the Pontifical Academy and GAIN. So we will make sure that we are all on one page and comfortable. The co-organizing entities, the Pontifical Academy of Science, signed from our side, and you from the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, but inviting others to co-sign. The current draft does not appropriately reflect today's conversation with the corporate sector and with the faith leaders. So we will bring in more, and it does also not appropriately reflect the presentations from the international agencies. So don't be concerned about that. We can build that, and we will build that in. We have sort of preempted a little bit of it while working on it last night, but that needs to be more considered and reflected in the current draft, and we will do that. We have enough time for that, and we'll take the time. We will also get back to you, those of you who have prepared papers or are willing to prepare papers on mechanisms for publication of them. It's tradition in this academy, and I'm sure you have visited the website of the academy, that the presentations and the deliberations are put on a YouTube channel. We want to be very transparent, as I mentioned earlier, but we do not publish PowerPoints. We do not publish PowerPoints. If camera switches over there and there, then some PowerPoints are seen, but for copyright issues, etc., we refrain from putting PowerPoints on the website. Let me briefly stop here and ask if there's any urgent need for an intervention at this stage before I come with a vote of thanks and then handing over to our Chancellor. Any questions? You're so nice. Vinita.
Just very quickly, a thought for your consideration. When we're talking about food safety and security, I think it is one area where we can think of co-opting the private sector in its many hues and forms, from seed companies to agri companies to finally branded and product companies. And I think we should really think hard if we truly believe in collaboration as being a way forward.
Thank you. And you had shared that session which I think we all felt was adding a lot of value, was rich in thought and open-minded and fair in the dialogue. And as Lawrence and I had echoed, we want more of that. So I would like to ask you, Vinita, to take a careful look, whatever the paragraphs regarding role of private sector, responsibility and also collaboration. Yeah, there's accountability issues which we have highlighted and cooperation opportunities, whether this is properly reflected. I would like to, please, go ahead.
Thank you. Very quickly also as to how we can possibly link food safety and nutrition. I mean, clearly they are inseparable. So probably one way of taking concrete steps might be by making sure we have food safety components in nutrition development projects. Because as I was saying yesterday, it is pointless, to just work on nutrition in isolation or on productivity in isolation if we don't address food safety. So I think one area to marry the two could be to be deliberate in making sure there are food safety components in nutrition and value chain development projects. Thank you.
Thank you. An important role I'm extrapolating, will fall upon you, Dr. Ayalev. The conference is in your neighborhood. The WHO, FAO Food Safety Conference in the vicinities of the African Union. And so colleagues from Africa will play an important role in demanding an impactful event, not a window dressing event on food safety and healthy diet. And you have an opportunity to have messages from this conversation here carried over and into the preparation and the execution of the conference. Colleagues, I need to, we are 2 minutes over time. I cut it here, forgive me, because I need to quickly thank people who, behind the scenes, were absolutely instrumental to make this conference feasible. The Secretariat here in the Pontifical Academy, Simonetta and everyone else who worked hours and not only during normal office hours to facilitate things work out. Sophia and Greg from GAIN carried a huge burden to make this possible. Monsignore Marcelo responded to emails on Holy Sunday when it was necessary. I could go on like that. So I'd like to ask you for a round of applause to those who brought us together and helped us make this conference feasible. With these words, Marcelo, give us some closing remarks.
I don't have any more to add, only to thank everyone for their active participation here, but especially to the president that have the initiative to organize this, and of the council, members of the council here. We have our friend, and really it's very important because we think it's in the line of the special ideas of the Pope to change the globalization of indifference that we have in the civilization of the love, in the civilization of participation, social participation of things, and especially about the alimentation is one of the more important things, because we can speak Pius XI to give this building to the academy, say many times, it's impossible to speak to the people about virtue if the people not have nothing to eat. So we understand that it's very important to have something to eat. And for this reason, the church understands that they need to follow the reason and the scientific reason, because today we know many things that in the past we don't know. About the extension of the problem, but about the solution of the problem, about what are the things that have security in the food. So I think this is a very important meeting, and maybe it's the first one, but we need to continue to work in this line. And I'm very happy that this could be a premise and first thing very important to continue to work and to have some influence in the globalized meeting that we can have about this. And of course, I thank also my friends of the different denominations of religions. In this case, it's very easy because three of us belong to the more or less same tradition that we consider rivalry religions. So it's not, we don't have nothing to discuss in the end about this question. And we learn of the tradition of the Jews and the importance to have the food. And I quoted a psalm that is more important for us of the tradition of the Jews. So I am really very happy, and I think that for the first time we really touch a very important subject that we need to continue to study. Thank you, President, for your initiative and for all the work that you do to realize this meeting. Thank you.